A small blonde girl pressed $47 into a stranger's palm. She didn't know he wore a patch feared in 48 states. She didn't know her coins would ignite 1,000 engines before sunrise. By morning, the man she saved would stand on her grandmother's porch, tears cutting through decades of road dust, while 1,000 Hell's Angels lined the street behind him, waiting to repay a debt that no bank could measure. This is that story. Before we continue, subscribe and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this journey travels. Emma Walsh counted her money every single night. $47.83. 2 years of scraping and saving and saying no to everything an 11-year-old girl was supposed to want. No ice cream from the truck that sang down Miller Street every summer evening. No candy bars at the checkout line. No new shoes when her toes pressed hard against the rubber tips of her old ones. Just coins dropping into glass, one by one, night after night. The mason jar sat on her nightstand like a promise. Blue marker on masking tape, letters fading but still readable in the dim light of her bedroom. Dreams. That's all it said. One word carrying the weight of everything she hoped for. "Emma, baby, you eat yet?" Her grandmother's voice floated down the hallway, tired and thin. Emma knew that voice. It meant another double shift. It meant tips that didn't cover the light bill. It meant Tuesday. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't you lie to me, child." Emma smiled. Grandma Dot always knew. Always. Even through walls, even with her back turned, even when Emma had practiced her lying face in the mirror for 10 minutes straight. "I had an apple." "An apple ain't dinner, Emma Marie." "It's Tuesday, Grandma." Silence. The kind of silence that said everything words couldn't. Tuesday meant choosing between electricity and food. Tuesday meant Grandma came home with that tight look around her mouth, the one she wore when she was doing math in her head and the numbers kept coming up wrong. Footsteps shuffled down the hall. Dorothy Walsh appeared in the doorway, 68 years old, silver hair escaping her bun, waitress uniform still smelling like bacon grease and other people's coffee. "Come here, baby girl." Emma went. She always went. 11 years old and trying so hard to be grown. But her grandmother's arms still made the world feel smaller, safer, possible. "I'm gonna fix this." Grandma Dot's whisper vibrated against Emma's hair. "Don't know how yet, but I'm gonna fix it." "I know. Your mama would be so proud of you." Emma pressed her face harder into her grandmother's shoulder. She didn't say what she was thinking. That proud didn't pay for the roof that leaked over her bed. That proud didn't stop the kids at school from whispering about the girl who wore the same 3 shirts every week. "Get some sleep, baby. Tomorrow's gonna be better." Emma wanted to believe her. She really did. Morning came gray and stubborn. Emma pulled on her cleanest jeans, the blue sweater from the church thrift sale with a tiny hole under the left arm. Nobody could see if she kept her elbows down. She grabbed her backpack, felt the weight of it against her spine. The jar was inside. Today she was trading dreams for reality. New notebooks because hers had run out of pages. Pens that actually worked. Maybe socks without holes if the math worked out. "Where are you going with that jar?" Emma froze at the screen door. Grandma Dot stood in the kitchen, coffee mug raised, eyes sharp as broken glass. "School supplies, Grandma, I need..." "That's your college money." "It's $47, that won't buy one textbook." "Every penny counts." "I know." Emma's hand tightened on the doorframe. "But I need pens that work more than I need a dream that's 10 years away." Something moved across her grandmother's face. Pain. Pride. That terrible mixture of both that came from watching a child grow up too fast. "You be careful on that road." "Yes, ma'am." "Straight home, Emma. I mean it. I promise." The screen door banged behind her, and Emma Walsh walked into a morning that would change everything. The old gas station sat dying at the corner of Route 11 and Walker Street. Pumps so ancient, they still had analog numbers. A sign advertising prices from 20 years ago. paint peeling off the walls like skin off a sunburn. Nobody came here anymore, not since the Speedway opened 3 miles up, with its digital everything and clean bathrooms. But today, something was different. Emma saw the motorcycle first, chrome catching weak sunlight, black leather seat cracked with age, saddlebags hanging open like tired mouths. The machine leaned on its kickstand, and beside it stood a man who made Emma's feet stop moving. Big. Bigger than her uncles. Bigger than anyone she'd seen outside of movies. Gray beard wild and tangled, hanging past his chest. Arms thick as fence posts, covered in tattoos that disappeared under a leather vest, heavy with patches. Hell's Angels. The words screamed across his back in red and white. Emma knew that name. Everyone in America knew that name. Criminals, outlaws, men who did things in dark places that regular people whispered about and prayed they'd never see up close. Run, her brain said. Walk away, cross the street. But her feet wouldn't move. Because the man wasn't doing anything scary. He was just standing there, staring at his hands. And in those massive, scarred, grease-stained hands was a scatter of coins so small they looked like toys. He counted them. Once, twice, 3 times. The pump behind him blinked red. $6.72. He had maybe $2. Emma watched his shoulders drop, watched him scrub a hand over his face like he was trying to wipe away something that wouldn't come off, watched him look up at the sky like he was asking for help from something he'd stopped believing in years ago. She knew that look. She'd seen it on her grandmother's face every Tuesday night, seen it in her own mirror on mornings when the hunger cramps hit before breakfast. The look of someone who'd hit a wall and didn't know how to get around it. Don't, her brain screamed. Don't be stupid. He's dangerous. He's trouble. He's everything Grandma warned you about. Her feet were already moving. Gunnar heard her before he saw her. Light footsteps on cracked concrete. Hesitant but steady. He didn't bother looking up. Probably some church lady about to cross the street to avoid him, clutching her purse like he was going to snatch it in broad daylight in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. 58 years old. 3 tours in Vietnam. 32 years with the only family that ever meant a damn. And here he stood, stuck at a dead gas station with $2.37. Bike running on fumes. Pride running on less. The footsteps stopped 3 feet away. Mister? Small voice. Young voice. Gunnar's head came up. A girl. 11, maybe 12. Blonde hair yanked back in a ponytail, losing its fight with the wind. Blue sweater with a hole she kept covering with her elbow. Skinny in a way that said she knew what hungry felt like. And in her hands, a glass jar filled with coins. What do you want, kid? His voice came out harsh. 58 years of cigarettes and whiskey and screaming over engine noise had stripped away anything soft. The girl flinched, but didn't run. You don't have enough money for gas. Not a question. A statement, direct, matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. That ain't your business. I know. She looked at her jar, then back at him. Her eyes weren't scared, Gunnar realized. They were sad. The kind of sad that came from recognizing your own reflection in a stranger. You look tired, mister. 5 words. 5 simple words that hit him somewhere he'd forgotten existed. I'm fine. My grandma says that too, when she's not fine. Gunnar opened his mouth. He was going to say something harsh, something that would make her leave, something that would let him fail in private like he'd been failing for years. The girl opened her jar. The lid popped off with a small sound, and then she was pouring. Every coin she had waterfalling through her small fingers into his enormous palms. Pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters, clinking against each other, filling his hands with 2 years of a little girl's hopes. What the hell are you? It's $47.83. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. Should be enough to fill your tank and get some food. Gunnar stared at the coins, then at the girl. Then at the empty jar she was tucking back into her backpack, like she just handed him a stick of gum instead of everything she had in the world. I can't take this. You already did. Kid, my name's Emma. She lifted her chin, looked him dead in the eyes. 11 years old and staring down a Hell's Angel like she had nothing to fear from anyone. Emma Walsh. I live on Miller Street, the house with the blue shutters that need painting. If you ever want to pay me back. She turned to leave. Why? The word ripped out of him, raw and broken. Nothing like the voice that had commanded men and ended fights and sworn blood oaths in candlelit rooms. Emma stopped, looked back over her shoulder. Because you needed it more than me. And my grandma always says, when you can help, you help. That's it. That's all there is. She walked away. Gunnar watched her go, watched until her blonde ponytail disappeared around the corner of Walker Street. Watched until he couldn't pretend anymore that his eyes were watering from the dust. The coins burned in his hands. $47.83. Everything a little girl had, given to a stranger who'd done nothing to deserve it. Emma made it 3 blocks before the tears came. Not dramatic tears, not loud sobs, just the quiet kind that leaked out when you'd done something you couldn't take back and weren't sure if it was the bravest or stupidest thing you'd ever done. Her jar was empty. 2 years gone in 30 seconds. No notebooks, no pens, no socks. Just the memory of a giant man's eyes going soft when she poured her dreams into his hands. What had she been thinking? She hadn't. That was the problem. She never did. She just saw someone hurting and her body moved before her brain could catch up. Same as when she gave her lunch to Marcus Thompson because his mom forgot again. Same as when she spent her birthday money on flowers for Mrs. Patterson after Mr. Patterson's heart gave out. Grandma Dot always said Emma had too much heart for her own good. Maybe she was right. Emma wiped her face with the back of her hand and kept walking. Whatever came next, she'd figure it out. She always had to. Gunnar didn't move for a long time. The coins grew warm against his palm, pressing into calluses built up over decades of gripping handlebars and throats in the hands of dying brothers. Emma Walsh, Miller Street, blue shutters. He closed his fist around $47.83 and walked back to his bike. The phone was buried in his vest pocket, same pocket that used to hold a switchblade, a photograph of a daughter he'd buried 15 years ago, a letter he'd written to his ex-wife and never sent. He pulled it out, battered flip phone, ancient and cracked, but reliable. The only reliable thing in his life. His thumbs scrolled through contacts, names he hadn't called in months, years, brothers who'd sworn oaths in blood and meant every word. One name stopped his scrolling. Chain. Marcus Chain Williams, president of the Ohio chapter. The man who'd found Gunnar sleeping under a bridge in '83 and handed him a patch that gave his life meaning again. He pressed call. 2 rings. Gunnar? That you? Chain's voice was rougher than before, but underneath was the same warmth that made him president. The kind of man who'd break your jaw for disrespect, then set the bone himself and sit with you until it healed. It's me. Jesus Christ, brother, where you been? We thought you were dead. Ohio, little town called Cedar Falls. What the hell are you doing in? Listen to me, Chain, just listen. Then I need you to do something. Silence on the line, heavy, waiting. Gunnar told him everything. The empty wallet, the dead pump, the girl with the jar, the way she'd looked at him like she could see past every patch and scar and sin to something underneath he'd forgotten was there. When he finished, his voice had cracked 3 times, and he'd stopped pretending it was road dust. She gave you everything she had? Every penny, brother. And she just walked away? Told me her grandma says when you can help, you help. Then she left like it was nothing. Like helping a Hell's Angel was the most natural thing in the world. Chain was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer. The way it got when he talked about his daughter, who died in '09, or his mother who'd raised him alone in Detroit on factory wages and prayer. What do you need? Everyone. Every chapter that can make it by morning. I don't care if they have to ride all night. I don't care what they have to cancel. I need them there. Where? Miller Street, Cedar Falls, Ohio. Blue shutters. What are we doing? Gunnar looked down at his fist, still clenched around a little girl's dreams. We're paying back a debt that money can't cover. The call went out at 4:47 p.m. Chain hung up and dialed his VP. His VP dialed the sergeant-at-arms. The sergeant-at-arms dialed every road captain in 5 states. By 5:30, phones were buzzing in garages from Pittsburgh to Indianapolis. By 6, engines were firing up. By 8, the first groups hit the highway. They came from Cleveland and Columbus, from Detroit and Chicago, from Louisville and Indianapolis, and little towns with names that didn't show up on any map. They rode through twilight, through darkness, through the dead hours when only truckers and outlaws owned the road. Headlights cutting through black like swords, throttles wide open, mile markers flashing past. Some had never met Gunnar. Didn't matter. When a brother called, you answered. That was the oath. That was the bond. That was the only law that meant anything. Others had ridden with him for decades, had bled beside him, buried friends beside him, held each other up when the world tried to knock them down. All of them had heard the same story passed phone to phone like sacred scripture. A little girl gave away everything she had to help one of us. Tomorrow we show her what that means. By midnight, 200 bikes thundered down Route 11. By 3 a.m., 500. By dawn, 1,000 Hells Angels sat parked along the back roads of Cedar Falls, Ohio, engines idling, waiting for the signal to ride. Emma woke to thunder. Not storm thunder, not the kind that cracked and faded. This thunder built and built, a rolling growl that shook her windows and vibrated through her mattress and made her heart slam against her ribs. She sat up in bed. The sky outside was gray with early light, too early for sun, too late for stars. And filling that gray, pouring down Miller Street like a river of chrome and black leather, was something Emma had never seen in her life. Motorcycles. Hundreds of them. No, more than hundreds. 1,000. They filled both lanes, spilled onto sidewalks, lined up so tight their handlebars nearly touched. Engines rumbling in sync like a single massive heartbeat. Chrome catching the weak morning light, leather patches bright against vests and jackets. And at the front of them all, riding slow and steady like a general leading an army, was the man from the gas station. Grandma! Emma's feet hit the cold floor before she could think. She ran to the living room, bare feet slapping wood, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Grandma Dot was already at the window, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips, face pale as paper. Lord have mercy. Her whisper barely made it past her lips. Emma Marie Walsh, what did you do? He was stuck, Grandma. He couldn't pay for gas. I just helped him, that's all. 3 knocks at the door. Heavy, solid, deliberate. Like a judge's gavel coming down. Grandma Dot set her coffee on the windowsill, straightened her robe, ran her fingers through her wild morning hair. Stay behind me, baby. Grandma. Behind me. Emma grabbed her grandmother's arm, and together they walked to the front door. Dorothy Walsh wrapped her fingers around the knob, took a breath, pulled. Gunnar stood on the porch. He looked different in the morning light, older, tired, human. His helmet hung from one hand. His gray beard ruffled in the breeze. His eyes, fixed on Emma, were wet. Behind him, stretching down Miller Street as far as Emma could see, 1,000 bikers sat on their machines, engines idling, eyes forward, silent, waiting. Ma'am, Gunnar's voice cracked on the word. He cleared his throat, tried again. Ma'am, my name is Gunnar, and I owe your granddaughter a debt I don't know how to repay. He opened his fist. In his palm, catching the early light, sat $47.83. She gave me everything she had. A stranger, a man who looked like everything people warn their children about. And she gave me everything without asking for a single thing back. His voice broke. He didn't try to hide it. I've done a lot of things in my life, ma'am. Things I'm proud of, things I'm not. But I have never, in 58 years of living, met anyone like your granddaughter. He gestured to the sea of motorcycles behind him. These are my brothers. Every one of them rode through the night to be here, and every one of them wants to know how we can pay back what your little girl gave me. Dorothy Walsh had lived 68 years on this earth. She'd buried a husband, lost a daughter, raised a granddaughter on tips and prayers. She'd survived things that would have broken weaker women. But standing on her porch in her old bathrobe, looking at a giant man holding her granddaughter's dreams in his palm, while 1,000 motorcycles rumbled behind him, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Dorothy Walsh didn't have words. Emma stepped forward, slipped her hand into her grandmother's. I told you, mister. Her voice was small but steady. You don't have to pay me back. That's not why I did it. Gunnar dropped to one knee, put himself at eye level with this little girl who'd cracked something open inside him he thought was welded shut forever. I know, he said, and that's exactly why we're here. Behind him, 1,000 engines roared. Dorothy Walsh had faced down bill collectors, cancer doctors, and a husband who drank himself into an early grave. She'd stared at eviction notices without flinching and told her dying daughter everything would be fine, while her heart shattered into pieces too small to ever fit back together. But she had never faced anything like this. 1,000 motorcycles, 1,000 men in leather, and a gray-bearded giant on his knees in front of her granddaughter, holding out coins like they were communion wafers. Get up, Dorothy said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. A man your age got no business kneeling on cold concrete. Gunnar rose slow, joints popping. Ma'am, I meant no disrespect. I didn't say you did. I said get up. She looked past him at the river of chrome and leather stretching down her street. Neighbors were appearing on porches now, clutching coffee cups, mouths hanging open. You planning to tell me what all this is about? I told you, ma'am. Your granddaughter gave you some coins. I heard that part. Dorothy crossed her arms over her bathrobe. What I'm asking is what you plan to do about it that requires 1,000 men on my street at 6 in the morning. Gunnar almost smiled. Almost. You always this direct? I'm 68 years old. I stopped having time for dancing around things about 40 years ago. Behind her, Emma tugged at her robe. Grandma, maybe we should... Hush, baby. Grown folks are talking. But Dorothy's hand found Emma's and squeezed. Well, I'm waiting. Gunnar turned and whistled, sharp and loud. A man near the front of the pack climbed off his bike and walked toward the porch. Younger than Gunnar, maybe 45, with a shaved head and arms like tree trunks. His vest said chain across the front pocket. Ma'am? Chain nodded at Dorothy, then looked at Emma. Something shifted in his face when he saw her. Something soft that didn't match the rest of him. This the girl? This is her, Gunnar said. Chain reached into his vest and pulled out a folded envelope. He handed it to Dorothy. What's this? Money, ma'am. Every man here contributed. Some gave 20, some gave 100. One brother sold his backup bike and put in the whole amount. Dorothy didn't open the envelope. How much? $47,000. The number hung in the morning air like a gunshot. Emma's grip on her grandmother's hand went tight. What? 47,000, Chain repeated. $1,000 for every dollar your granddaughter gave our brother. We figured that was about right. Dorothy's legs went weak. She grabbed the porch railing to steady herself, envelope crumpling in her fist. You can't. This is... I don't... Grandma? Emma's voice pitched high with worry. Grandma, are you okay? Give me a minute, baby. Gunnar stepped closer. His voice dropped low, meant only for Dorothy. Ma'am, I know this is a lot. I know we look like trouble. Half the country thinks we're criminals, and maybe some of us were. Maybe some of us still are by certain definitions. But what your granddaughter did yesterday, she didn't see a criminal. She saw a tired old man who needed help, and she helped him without asking for anything back. His voice cracked. He didn't try to hide it. I've been riding 40 years. I've seen men die for this club. I've seen loyalty you wouldn't believe and betrayal that would break your heart. But I have never, not once, seen kindness like what that little girl showed me. Dorothy looked at him. Really looked. Past the leather and the patches and the beard and the reputation. Looked at his eyes, red-rimmed and wet, and saw something she recognized. Pain. The kind that came from losing something you couldn't get back. You lost someone, she said quietly. Didn't you? Gunner's jaw tightened. Ma'am, the way you look at my granddaughter, that's not just gratitude, that's grief. For a long moment, Gunner didn't speak. When he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. Her name was Sarah, my daughter. She died when she was 12, leukemia. She had blonde hair just like Emma's, same eyes, same way of looking at people like she could see right through to their souls. Emma stepped out from behind her grandmother. I'm sorry about your daughter, mister. Gunner looked down at her. This tiny girl who'd given him everything she had, who'd seen past his patches to the broken man underneath, who reminded him so much of Sarah that it hurt to breathe. Thank you, sweetheart. Is that why you came back? Because I remind you of her? The question hit Gunner like a fist. Direct, honest, no games. Partly, he admitted, but mostly because what you did deserves to be honored. You understand that? What you did matters. It matters more than you know. Dorothy had found her balance again. She straightened up, squared her shoulders, and looked at the envelope in her hand. I can't accept this. Ma'am, I said I can't accept this. This is too much. We didn't do anything to earn. Neither did I. The words stopped Dorothy cold. I didn't earn what Emma gave me, Gunner continued. I was just a stranger at a gas station. A scary-looking old man who couldn't pay for fuel. She had every reason to walk past me, every reason to be afraid. But she wasn't. She just saw someone who needed help, and she helped. He gestured at the 1,000 bikes behind him. That's what we're doing now. We're not asking if you earned it. We're just seeing someone who needs help, and we're helping. Dorothy's eyes stung. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. You don't even know us. I know enough. You know my granddaughter gave you $47. That's all you know. That's enough. Gunner's voice was firm. That's more than enough. A new voice cut through the morning air. What in the blue hell is going on here? Everyone turned. Officer Dale Reynolds stood at the edge of the property line, hand resting on his holster. 2 more squad cars pulled up behind him, lights flashing but sirens off. Dorothy felt her stomach drop. Reynolds. Of all the cops in Cedar Falls, it had to be Reynolds. The man who'd given her a ticket for a broken taillight 2 months ago and called her girl while doing it. The man who'd arrested her nephew for looking suspicious and held him overnight without charges. Officer, Gunner's voice went flat, neutral. Can I help you? You can start by explaining why there are 1,000 motorcycles on a residential street at 6 in the morning. Reynolds' hand hadn't moved from his gun. I'm getting calls from half the neighborhood about a gang invasion. No invasion, officer, just visiting friends. Friends. Reynolds looked at Dorothy, then at Emma, then back at Gunner. His lip curled. Since when do Hell's Angels have friends in Cedar Falls? Since yesterday. That's so? Reynolds stepped closer, chest puffed out, chin lifted. The posture of a man used to making people back down. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like intimidation. Maybe extortion. Got a bunch of known criminals surrounding an elderly woman and a child. You watch your mouth. Dorothy's voice cracked like a whip. These men are guests on my property. Reynolds turned to her, eyebrows raised. Excuse me? You heard me, Dale Reynolds. These men are my guests. They came here to help me, which is more than I can say for the Cedar Falls Police Department when my roof was leaking and my porch was falling apart and nobody would return my calls. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside You're going to need to get off my lawn. Dorothy stepped forward, putting herself between Reynolds and Gunner. 68 years old, 5'4", bathrobe and slippers, staring down a cop with a gun like he was a misbehaving child. You got a warrant? Reynolds blinked. What? A warrant. A piece of paper from a judge saying you can be on my property. You got one? I don't need a warrant to... Yes, you do. This is private property. These men are here at my invitation. Unless you've got a warrant or you're witnessing an active crime, you've got no business being here. There are 1,000 motorcycles blocking the street. Then write them parking tickets. But you do it from the street, not from my yard. Dorothy's voice dropped low and dangerous. Or do I need to call my nephew? The one you arrested last year for no reason? The one who's now a paralegal at Morrison and Associates? I'm sure he'd love to hear about you harassing an elderly woman and her granddaughter. Reynolds' face went red. His hand twitched on his holster. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then Change stepped forward. He moved slow, hands visible, nothing threatening about his posture. But something about him made Reynolds take a half step back. Officer, we don't want any trouble. Change's voice was calm, reasonable. We're here to do some repairs on this lady's house, that's all. Volunteer work, community service, you might call it. Community service? Reynolds practically spat the words. That's right. Now, I understand you've got concerns. I understand we don't exactly look like the local Rotary Club. But I promise you, we're not here to cause problems. We're here to fix a porch, maybe do some painting, make sure this family's taken care of. He paused. That's not illegal, last I checked. Reynolds looked at the bikes, looked at the men sitting on them, silent and watchful, looked at Dorothy, still standing with her chin raised and her eyes blazing, looked at little Emma, clutching her grandmother's hand. I'm going to be watching, he said finally. One wrong move, one complaint from any neighbor, and I'm coming back with backup. Understood, officer. Reynolds turned and walked back to his car. Slow, deliberate, making sure everyone saw that he was choosing to leave, not being forced out. The moment his car pulled away, Dorothy let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Lord have mercy, she muttered. I think I need to sit down. Grandma? Emma's voice was small. That was amazing. That was foolish is what it was. But Dorothy was smiling now, a tired smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Don't ever talk to police like that, baby. I'm too old to care about consequences, but you're not. Gunner was staring at her with something like awe. Ma'am, I've seen a lot of people stand up to cops in my time. Never seen anyone do it better than you just did. Flattery won't make me take your money. It's not flattery, it's fact. He paused. And the money's not negotiable. If you won't take it for yourself, take it for Emma. Put it away for her education, her future, whatever she needs. Dorothy looked at the envelope still crumpled in her hand. $47,000. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. More than she'd earned in 3 years of double shifts and aching feet and tips that never quite covered the bills. What about the rest? She asked quietly. You said you came to help. What kind of help are we talking about? Gunner smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Well, ma'am, I couldn't help noticing your porch looks like it might collapse if someone sneezes too hard. And your roof's got more patches than my vest. And that fence over there appears to be held together by rust and prayer. Dorothy felt a laugh building in her chest. You're not wrong. So here's what I'm thinking. We got about 200 brothers out there who know their way around a hammer, another 50 or so who've done electrical work, a few plumbers, even got a guy who used to be a contractor before he found the road. He spread his hands. Let us work. Let us fix what's broken. Let us give that little girl a house that doesn't leak when it rains. His voice softened. Let us pay back what she gave me. Please. Dorothy Walsh had too much pride. She knew that. It was her greatest strength and her biggest flaw. The thing that kept her standing when everything tried to knock her down, but also the thing that kept her from asking for help when she needed it. She looked at Emma, her granddaughter, her whole world, the girl who'd given away everything she had because she saw a stranger in need. Okay, she whispered. Ma'am? I said okay. Her voice grew stronger. You want to fix my porch? Fix my porch. You want to paint my fence? Paint my fence. But I'm making coffee, and I'm making breakfast, and if anyone tracks mud into my living room, I don't care how big they are, they're answering to me. Gunnar laughed. A real laugh, deep and rusty like it hadn't been used in years. Yes, ma'am, I'll make sure they know. He turned to the waiting bikes and raised his fist. 1,000 engines roared in answer, and Miller Street would never be the same. Within an hour, the transformation had begun. Men who looked like they'd been raised by wolves carried lumber with careful hands. Bearded giants in leather vests held paintbrushes like surgical instruments. Tattoos that had been earned in blood and sworn over in candlelight now glistened with sweat as their owners hammered nails into fresh wood. Emma stood on the front lawn, watching in disbelief. Grandma, are you seeing this? I'm seeing it, baby. I'm just not sure I believe it. The old porch was already gone, ripped away in pieces by men who moved with surprising coordination. In its place, new boards were being laid, cut precise, fit together like puzzle pieces by hands that knew what they were doing. A man with stitch on his vest knelt near Emma, measuring a board with a tape that had seen better days. He caught her looking and winked. You ever built anything, little sister? Emma shook her head. No, sir. Sir, he laughed. Nobody's called me sir in 30 years. Name's Stitch. You know why they call me that? Because you sew? Because I've put more stitches in more brothers than most doctors have in their whole careers. He held up his hands, showing her the scars across his knuckles. Learned real young that if you know how to fix things, people always need you around. That's smart. That's survival. He gestured at the work around them. Same reason I learned carpentry, and plumbing, and electrical. You want to be useful in this life, Emma. You want to be the person people turn to when things go wrong. Emma thought about that. Is that why you're all here? Because Gunnar needed help? Stitch stopped measuring, looked at her with eyes that had seen more than any child should know about. Gunnar didn't need help. Gunnar needed reminding. Reminding of what? That there's still good in the world, that people still do kind things for strangers, that everything he's seen and done doesn't have to be the whole story. Stitch went back to his measuring. You gave him that, little sister. You gave all of us that. A commotion near the street pulled Emma's attention away. She turned to see a group of neighbors gathered at the edge of the property, talking in hushed tones, pointing, shaking their heads. Mrs. Hendricks from 3 doors down was clutching her phone, probably ready to call the police again. Mr. Morrison had his arms crossed, jaw tight, watching the bikers like they might attack at any moment. But not everyone looked hostile. Old Mr. Patterson, who Emma had helped with groceries every Saturday for 2 years, was walking toward the house. His cane tapped the sidewalk with each step, slow but steady. Mr. Patterson! Emma ran to meet him. What are you doing here? Heard the noise. His voice was thin but warm. Wanted to see what all the fuss was about. These men are helping fix our house. I can see that. Mr. Patterson squinted at the workers, at the motorcycles, at the patches and leather and tattoos. Hell's Angels, are they? Yes, sir. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Your grandmother know about this? It was her idea. Well, kind of. She said they could help. Did she now? Mr. Patterson's weathered face cracked into something like a smile. Always knew Dorothy Walsh had more spine than the rest of the street combined. A biker walked past carrying a stack of boards. He nodded at Mr. Patterson. "Morning, sir." "Morning." Mr. Patterson watched him go, then looked at Emma. "Interesting friends you've made." "I don't know if they're friends, I helped one of them yesterday and now they're repaying the favor." Mr. Patterson put a hand on her shoulder. His grip was weak but steady. "That's how it works, child. Kindness plants seeds. Sometimes they grow into flowers. Sometimes they grow into forests." He looked at the work happening around them. "Looks like you planted a forest." Emma didn't know what to say, so she just stood there with Mr. Patterson's hand on her shoulder, watching 1,000 strangers rebuild her world, one board at a time. By noon, the porch was done. New boards, fresh paint, sturdy railings that didn't wobble when you leaned on them. Stairs that didn't creak, didn't sag, didn't threaten to give way under your feet. Dorothy stood at the bottom, staring up at it like she was seeing a mirage. How is this possible? Gunnar wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag that had once been white. "Got a lot of hands, ma'am. Makes the work go fast." "Fast?" She shook her head. "I've been trying to get this porch fixed for 3 years. 3 years of calling contractors and getting quotes I couldn't afford and watching it fall apart piece by piece. And you did it in 6 hours." "Well, we didn't have to drive across town, estimate the job, and pad the invoice," Gunnar grinned. "We also don't charge for materials." "About that," Dorothy's voice went serious. "Where did all this lumber come from? This paint? I know what this costs and—" "Donated. By who?" "The local hardware store, actually." Gunnar pointed down the street, where a truck from Miller's Building Supplies sat with its bed half empty. "Owner came by a few hours ago, saw what we were doing, asked who was paying. I told him nobody, that we were doing it for free. He went back to his store and came back with everything we needed." Dorothy's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Tom Miller donated materials? Said he was in Vietnam himself. 68 to 69, said any man who served and any brother of a man who served was good in his book." Gunnar paused. "Also said he remembered you from church. Said you made him a casserole when his wife was sick." Dorothy felt tears prick her eyes. "That was 4 years ago. People remember kindness, ma'am. They remember longer than you'd think." She looked at the porch again, at the men working on her roof now, pulling off damaged shingles, laying down new ones, at the group repainting her fence, transforming weathered gray to crisp white, at her granddaughter, sitting on the new porch steps, talking to a massive biker like they'd known each other for years. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank us, ma'am." "Yes, I do. You don't understand. You don't know." Her voice broke. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold it together. "You don't know how hard it's been." Gunnar was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, soft and low. "I think maybe I do." Dorothy looked at him. "I told you about Sarah," he said. "What I didn't tell you was what happened after. After she died, I fell apart. My wife left. My job went away. I spent 3 years drinking myself to death, and the only reason I didn't finish the job was because these men," he gestured at the bikers, "these men who everybody thinks are monsters, they found me. They picked me up. They gave me a reason to keep going." He met her eyes. "So yeah, ma'am, I think I know what hard looks like, and I think I know what it means when someone shows up to help carry the weight." Dorothy reached out and took his hand. Just held it, this stranger's hand, rough and calloused and stained with years of oil and road dust. "Thank you," she said. "I know you said I don't have to say it, but I'm saying it anyway. Thank you." Gunnar squeezed her hand gently. "You're welcome, ma'am." A shout from the roof broke the moment. "We got a problem up here." Gunnar let go of Dorothy's hand and strode toward the ladder. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where half these support beams are rotted through. If we'd had a hard rain, this whole section would have come down. Can you fix it? Going to need more lumber, and probably another few hours. Then we stay a few more hours. Gunnar looked back at Dorothy. If that's all right with you, ma'am. Dorothy nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him climb the ladder. This gray-bearded man who'd shown up on her porch with 1,000 brothers because her granddaughter had given him $47. And she thought about what Emma had said, what she'd told this stranger at a gas station. When you can help, you help. Maybe that was all there was to it. Maybe that was everything. The afternoon sun hung heavy and orange when Emma saw the car. It pulled up slow, a silver sedan with tinted windows, parking at the edge of the chaos. Emma watched from the porch steps, curious, as the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out, blonde hair, professional suit, notebook in hand. A man followed with a camera on his shoulder. Media, Stitch muttered from behind Emma. Somebody called the news. The woman was already walking toward the house, heels clicking on the sidewalk, eyes scanning the scene like a hawk looking for prey. "Excuse me," she called out. "I'm looking for the homeowner. We're from Channel 7, and we'd like to ask some questions about—" Gunnar appeared in her path. "No press." "Sir, this is a public interest story. 1,000 motorcycles, a neighborhood." "I said no press." Gunnar's voice was flat, final. These people didn't ask for cameras. They didn't ask for attention. They just asked for help. The public has a right to know. The public has a right to mind their own business. Gunnar stepped closer, and the reporter took an involuntary step back. "We're not here for publicity. We're not here to be your feel-good story of the week. We're here because a little girl did something kind, and we're paying it back. That's all. That's private. That's family business." The reporter opened her mouth to argue. Dorothy's voice cut through the air. "He's right." Everyone turned. Dorothy had come down from the porch, still in her bathrobe, still looking like she'd been dragged through an emotional hurricane. "I appreciate your interest," she said to the reporter, "but this isn't a story. This is my home. This is my family, and I'm asking you to respect our privacy." The reporter hesitated. Her cameraman had already stopped filming, reading the room. "If you change your mind," she started, "I won't." There was something in Dorothy's voice that closed the conversation. The reporter nodded once, turned, and walked back to her car. Gunnar watched them drive away. "Vultures. They're just doing their job," Dorothy said. "Their job is to turn real life into entertainment, to take something meaningful and package it for ratings." Gunnar shook his head. "What happened here today isn't entertainment, it's—" He stopped, struggled for words. "Sacred," Emma said quietly. Both adults looked at her. "That's what it is, right?" Emma looked up at Gunnar, then at her grandmother. "Like church, kind of. People helping people. That's sacred." Gunnar crouched down to her level. "Yeah, little sister, that's exactly what it is." Dorothy put her hand on Emma's head. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you, Grandma." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Dorothy Walsh laughed. Really laughed, deep and free, the sound mixing with the hammering and sawing and rumble of engines. Miller Street had never heard anything like it. The laughter hadn't finished dying on Dorothy's lips when the sound of tires screeching cut through the afternoon air. Emma turned toward the street. A black pickup truck had pulled up hard, door flying open before the engine even stopped. A man jumped out, face red, veins popping in his neck, and started storming toward the house. "What the hell is this?" Emma didn't recognize him at first. Then she did. Kevin Marsh. He lived 2 streets over, worked at the auto plant, and had a reputation for being the loudest voice at every town council meeting. The kind of man who complained about everything and fixed nothing. Gunnar stepped forward, putting himself between Marsh and the porch. "Can I help you?" "You can help me by getting these criminals off our streets." Marsh jabbed a finger at the motorcycles, at the men working on the roof, at everything. "This is a family neighborhood. We don't want your kind here." "Our kind," Gunnar's voice stayed level. "And what kind would that be?" Thugs, murderers, drug dealers. Marsh's voice rose with each word. I've got kids 2 blocks away. My daughter walks to school on this street, and now I've got to explain to her why there are 1,000 gang members having a party outside her friend's house? We're not having a party, we're fixing a roof. I don't care what you're doing. I want you gone. More neighbors were gathering now. Some looked sympathetic to Marsh, others just looked curious. A few, like Mr. Patterson, still standing near the edge of the lawn, looked ready to intervene. Dorothy stepped off the porch. "Kevin Marsh," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a woman who'd had enough. "I've known you since you were in diapers. Your mama and I used to sing in the church choir together before she passed. And I know she raised you better than this." Marsh's face twisted. "Don't bring my mother into this, Dorothy. I'll bring whoever I please into whatever I please. This is my property. These are my guests. And if you've got a problem with that, you can take it up with the Lord, because he's the only one I answer to." "Your guests?" Marsh laughed, harsh and ugly. "These people are criminals. Everyone knows what Hell's Angels are. They sell drugs. They kill people. They fixed my porch." The simple statement stopped Marsh mid-rant. "They fixed my porch," Dorothy repeated. "They fixed my roof. They painted my fence. They did more for me and my granddaughter in one day than this whole neighborhood has done in 3 years. That doesn't change what they are." "And what are they, Kevin? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, they're just men. Men with rough pasts, maybe. Men who've made mistakes. But men who showed up when nobody else did." She stepped closer to Marsh, close enough that he had to look down at her. "Where were you when my porch was falling apart? Where were you when I couldn't afford to fix my roof? Where were you when my granddaughter was wearing shoes with holes because I couldn't make rent and buy her new ones at the same time?" Marsh's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. "That's what I thought." Dorothy turned her back on him. "Now get off my lawn before I have these nice gentlemen escort you off." For a long, tense moment, Marsh didn't move. His hands were clenched at his sides, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he wanted to spit out. Then Chain appeared at Gunner's shoulder. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to. His presence was enough. Marsh took a step back, then another. "This isn't over," he said. "I'm calling an emergency town council meeting. We'll see how you feel when the whole community is against you." He turned and stalked back to his truck, door slamming, tires squealing as he pulled away. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby." But Dorothy's hands were shaking. "Just fine." Gunner moved to her side. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to cause you trouble with your neighbors." "You didn't cause anything. Kevin Marsh has been looking for something to be angry about since his wife left him last year. Don't you pay him any mind. Still, if our being here is going to make things hard for you, if you finish that sentence, I'm going to be very upset with you." Dorothy's voice was firm despite the tremor in her hands. "You're not leaving until the work is done. That's final." Gunner studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He turned back to the workers, calling out orders, getting everyone back on task. Within minutes, the hammering resumed, the painting continued, and Miller Street filled again with the sound of work being done. But Emma noticed something different now. The neighbors who'd been watching from a distance had split into 2 groups. Some had retreated to their houses, curtains drawn, doors locked. But others, more than before, had moved closer, watching not with suspicion, but with something like wonder. And Mr. Patterson was walking toward her, his cane tapping steady on the sidewalk. "That grandmother of yours," he said when he reached Emma, "she's something else." "I know. You know what else I know?" He lowered himself onto the porch steps beside her, joints creaking. "I know that man Marsh is going to make good on his threat. He's going to call that meeting, and he's going to try to turn this whole town against you." Emma's stomach tightened. "What should we do?" "Nothing you can do, child, except keep being who you are." Mr. Patterson patted her hand with fingers thin and paper dry. The truth has a way of winning out. It just takes longer than lies, is all. Emma wanted to believe him. She really did. But she'd seen the look in Kevin Marsh's eyes. The hatred, the fear twisted into something ugly and sharp. And she knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The sun was starting to set when Emma found Gunnar sitting alone behind the house. He'd moved away from the others, settled on an overturned bucket near the back fence, staring at something in his hands. Emma approached quietly, not wanting to disturb him, but his head came up before she got within 10 feet. "Hey, little sister." "Hey." She stopped a few steps away. "What are you doing back here?" "Just thinking." He held up what he'd been looking at, a photograph, worn at the edges, colors faded by time. "Sometimes I need a minute to myself." "Is that your daughter?" Gunnar was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Sarah, this was her last birthday. She was 11, same as you. We didn't know yet that she was sick. She was just happy, blowing out candles, making wishes." Emma moved closer. Gunnar tilted the photo so she could see. A little girl with blonde hair and bright eyes smiled up at her from the past. Behind her, a younger Gunnar, beard darker, face less lined, was leaning in to help her with the candles. Both of them were laughing. "She looks nice," Emma said. "She was the best person I ever knew." Gunnar's voice cracked. "She used to do what you did, you know, give away everything she had to help people. Drove her mother crazy. We'd go to the store and she'd spend her whole allowance on food for the homeless guy outside. Every single time." "What happened to her?" "Leukemia. We found out 3 months after this picture was taken. She fought for a year. A whole year of hospitals and treatments and watching her get weaker." He pressed his thumb against the photograph, against his daughter's smiling face. "She died holding my hand, telling me not to be sad, telling me she was going somewhere good." Emma didn't know what to say, so she sat down on the grass beside him and said nothing at all. They stayed like that for a while. The sounds of work drifted from the front of the house. Hammers, voices, the occasional burst of laughter. But back here it was quiet. "Can I tell you something?" Gunnar said finally. "Yeah?" "When you gave me those coins yesterday, I was at the end of my rope. I mean, really at the end. I'd been riding for 3 days straight, trying to outrun, I don't know what, memories maybe, the feeling that nothing meant anything anymore." He tucked the photograph back into his vest. "I was thinking about just stopping, pulling off the road somewhere quiet and letting it all be over. And then there you were, this little girl with a jar full of dreams, pouring them into my hands like they were nothing." Emma's heart squeezed tight. "But they weren't nothing," Gunnar continued. "They were everything. You gave me everything you had, and you didn't even know me. You didn't know what I'd done or who I was or what I was planning. You just saw someone who needed help." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were wet. "You saved my life, Emma. I don't know if you understand that, but I need you to know it. You saved my life." Emma felt tears burning in her own eyes. "I didn't do anything special. You just helped. I know." Gunnar smiled, sad and soft. "That's what makes it special. You didn't think about it. You didn't calculate whether I deserved it. You just saw someone hurting and you reached out." He put his hand on her shoulder, gentle despite its size. "Don't ever lose that, little sister. The world is going to try to take it from you. It's going to tell you that people aren't worth helping, that kindness is weakness, that you should protect yourself first and worry about everyone else never. Don't listen." "I won't. Promise me." "I promise." Gunnar squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. "Now come on. Your grandmother's probably wondering where you are, and I think the boys found something in the attic they want to show you." Emma stood, brushing grass from her jeans. "What kind of something?" "You'll see." They walked back around the house together, the old biker and the little girl, their shadows stretching long in the setting sun. The attic discovery turned out to be a box of old photographs. Dorothy stood in the living room, surrounded by bikers, staring at pictures she hadn't seen in 20 years. Her hands shook as she lifted one after another from the yellowed cardboard. "Where did you find these?" "Behind some insulation." A biker named Wrench, so called because he could fix anything with an engine, held up the box. "Looks like they got shoved back there and forgotten." "My wedding," Dorothy whispered, holding up a photo of a young couple outside a church. The bride laughing, the groom looking like he'd won the lottery. "I thought these were lost in the flood of '94. Emma peered at the picture. "Is that Grandpa?" "That's him, Harold James Walsh. Handsomest man in Cedar Falls. Or so I thought." Dorothy's voice caught. "He died before you were born, baby. Heart attack at 52. Too young. Way too young." More pictures emerged from the box. Dorothy as a young woman, hair dark and eyes bright. Harold building the very porch that had just been replaced. A little girl with pigtails who must have been Emma's mother. "She looked like you," Gunnar said quietly, pointing at the pigtailed girl. "My Karen." Dorothy traced her daughter's face with a trembling finger. She was 6 in this picture, already headstrong, already determined to do everything her own way. "What happened to her?" The question came from Stitch, who'd been watching from the doorway. "If you don't mind my asking." "Cancer. Same as your Sarah." Dorothy looked at Gunnar. She was 34. Emma was just a baby. Karen held her daughter one last time, kissed her forehead, and told me to raise her right. Her voice broke. "I've been trying ever since." The room went quiet. Emma moved to her grandmother's side, slipping her hand into Dorothy's. "You did raise me right, Grandma." "Did I?" Dorothy's laugh was wet with tears. "Sometimes I wonder. Sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about all the things I couldn't give you, all the things you should have had. I have everything I need. Baby. I mean it." Emma squeezed her grandmother's hand tight. "I have you. I have this house. I have..." She looked around at the bikers, at these strangers who'd become something else overnight. "I have family." Gunnar cleared his throat. "She's right, ma'am. Family isn't about what you can give someone. It's about showing up, being there, doing the work." He gestured at the men around him. "Every man in this room knows what it's like to have nothing, to come from nothing. But we also know what it's like to find people who show up for you anyway." He stepped forward, reached into his vest, and pulled out something small that glinted in the lamplight. A patch. Not the Hells Angels logo, but something different. A guardian angel with spread wings, embroidered in silver thread. "We give this to family," Gunnar said, "to people we protect, people who ride with us, even when they're standing still." He held it out to Emma. "This is yours now, little sister. You earned it." Emma stared at the patch, at the tiny angel wings catching light, at the threads that represented something bigger than she could fully understand. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take it. Say you'll remember what it means. Say you'll keep being who you are, no matter what anyone tells you." Emma reached out and took the patch. It was lighter than she expected, warm from being close to Gunnar's heart. "Thank you." "No," Gunnar shook his head. "Thank you." Dorothy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Lord have mercy. You people are going to make me cry myself dry." "Sorry, ma'am," but Gunnar was smiling. "Didn't mean to get emotional." "Yes, you did. Don't lie to an old woman." Laughter rippled through the room. Real laughter, warm and easy, the kind that came from people who'd shared something true. Emma clutched the patch to her chest, feeling the weight of it against her palm. Family, she thought. This is what family feels like. She'd never forget it. The knock came just after dark. Dorothy was in the kitchen, making sandwiches for the workers who refused to stop for dinner. Emma was helping, spreading mayonnaise with careful strokes, when the sound echoed through the house. 3 knocks, soft but insistent. Gunnar appeared in the kitchen doorway. "You expecting anyone?" "No." Dorothy wiped her hands on a dish towel. Stay here, baby. Grandma, I said stay here. Dorothy walked to the front door, Gunnar following close behind. She peered through the window, then her whole body went stiff. Lord have mercy. Who is it? Dorothy didn't answer. She just opened the door. A woman stood on the new porch. Late 30s, blonde hair pulled back, professional clothes wrinkled like she'd been traveling. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup smudged, her hands clutching a worn leather purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Mrs. Walsh? Her voice trembled. I'm sorry to bother you. I know it's late. She stopped. Her gaze had moved past Dorothy to Gunnar, and her face crumpled. Dad? The word hit the air like a thunderclap. Gunnar stood frozen in the doorway, every muscle locked, face draining of color. Jessica? I've been looking for you for 3 days. The woman, Jessica, was crying now, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. I called everyone. Nobody knew where you were. I thought... She couldn't finish. Gunnar moved. 2 steps, 3, and then his daughter was in his arms, both of them shaking, both of them holding on like letting go meant drowning. Emma appeared at Dorothy's elbow. Grandma? Who is that? Dorothy watched the father and daughter cling to each other, watched a man she'd known for less than 24 hours break apart and come back together in the arms of the child she thought he'd lost. I think, Dorothy said slowly, our story just got a lot more complicated. Gunnar pulled back just enough to look at his daughter's face. How did you find me? The news. Jessica laughed through her tears. Someone posted a video online. 1,000 motorcycles on a residential street in Ohio. I saw the patches. I knew. But we haven't talked in 5 years. I know, Dad. She grabbed his vest, shaking him slightly. I was angry. I was hurt. But I never stopped. I know, baby. I know. They held each other again, and Emma found herself crying too, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the look on Gunnar's face, the shock melting into joy, melting into something that looked like hope. Maybe it was the way Dorothy's hand found her shoulder and squeezed tight. Or maybe it was just the understanding, deep in her 11-year-old heart, that she was witnessing something sacred. A father and daughter finding their way back to each other, all because of $47.83. They sat on the new porch, all of them, as the stars came out one by one. Jessica had stopped crying, though she still held her father's hand like she was afraid he might disappear. Dorothy had brought out coffee and sandwiches. Emma sat on the steps, the guardian angel patch still clutched in her fist. I thought you were dead, Jessica said. Her voice was steadier now, but fragile. When I heard about the accident last year, I thought, it wasn't that bad, Gunnar said. You spent 3 weeks in the hospital. I've had worse. Dad, Jessica's voice cracked. Don't do that thing where you pretend nothing matters. I can't, she took a shaky breath. I can't lose you too. Not after Sarah, not after Mom. Gunnar's jaw tightened at the mention of his wife. Your mother and I know you couldn't stay together after Sarah. I understand that now. But you both just disappeared. She went to Arizona. You went God knows where, and I was left trying to figure out how to be a person when everyone I loved was falling apart. I'm sorry. The words sounded like they'd been locked inside him for years, finally breaking free. I'm so sorry, Jess. I didn't know how to. After Sarah, I know, Dad, I know. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jessica looked at Emma, at this small girl watching from the steps with red-rimmed eyes and a patch clutched to her heart. You're the one who helped him. At the gas station, Emma nodded. Jessica let go of her father's hand, stood up, walked over to Emma and knelt down so they were eye to eye. Thank you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how I can ever thank you enough. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave my father a reason to reach out, to call his brothers, to let people back in. Jessica took Emma's free hand, the one not holding the patch. You gave me my dad back, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. Emma didn't know what to say, so she just held Jessica's hand and let the silence speak for both of them. Behind them, Gunnar watched his daughter connect with the little girl who changed everything. And for the first time in 15 years, he felt something he thought he'd never feel again. Hope. Real, burning, undeniable hope. The kind that made you believe tomorrow might be better than today. The kind that made you want to stick around to see it. Hope is a fragile thing. Emma learned that the next morning when she woke to the sound of her grandmother crying. Not the quiet kind of tears Dorothy had shed yesterday, the bittersweet kind that came from old photographs and unexpected kindness. These were different, harsh, broken, the sound of something shattering. Emma threw off her blankets and ran to the kitchen. Dorothy sat at the table, a piece of paper crumpled in her fist, her whole body shaking. Gunnar stood beside her, face dark as a storm cloud. Jessica had one hand on Dorothy's shoulder, looking lost. "Grandma?" Emma's voice came out small. "What's wrong?" Dorothy couldn't answer. She just held out the paper. Emma took it, smoothed it out, read the words printed in cold, official font. Notice of code violations. Her eyes scanned the page. Unapproved construction, lack of proper permits, failure to submit renovation plans, violation of residential zoning ordinances. And at the bottom, the part that made her stomach drop. All work must cease immediately. Property subject to inspection within 48 hours. Fines may be assessed up to $50,000. Continued violations may result in condemnation of property. They can't do this. Emma's voice shook. They can't. They already did. Gunnar's jaw was tight enough to crack stone. That bastard Marsh, he did this. "We don't know that," Jessica said. "Yes, we do. Emergency town council meeting," he said. "This is what he meant." Gunnar slammed his palm against the counter hard enough to rattle the dishes. "He couldn't run us off, so he went and found another way." Dorothy finally looked up. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with tears, but something else was there now, something hard. $50,000, she whispered. "Where am I supposed to get $50,000? "You have the money we gave you," Gunnar said. "Use it for the fines. That's what it's for." That money was for Emma's future, her education. I can't just... "Ma'am, what good is her education if you lose the house?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Emma watched her grandmother's face crumble, watched her try to hold it together and fail, watched her put her head in her hands and weep like the world had finally won. "Grandma," Emma moved to her side, wrapped her small arms around Dorothy's shaking shoulders. "Grandma, it's okay. We'll figure it out. We always figure it out." "Baby, I'm so tired of figuring it out." Dorothy's voice was muffled against her hands. "I'm so tired of fighting. Every time I think we might be okay, something else comes along to knock us down. Then we get back up. That's what you always tell me. We get back up and we keep going." Dorothy lifted her head, looked at her granddaughter, this 11-year-old girl who'd given away everything she had to a stranger and started something nobody could have predicted. "When did you get so strong?" "I learned from you." Dorothy pulled Emma close, held her tight, breathed in the smell of her shampoo and her innocence and her unshakable faith that somehow, some way, things would work out. Gunnar watched them, something shifting in his face. "I need to make some calls," he said quietly. "Dad?" Jessica looked at him. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done yesterday." He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to find out exactly who's behind this, and then I'm going to fix it." He walked out to the porch, phone already at his ear. Jessica looked at Dorothy and Emma, still holding each other at the kitchen table. "My father doesn't give up," she said. Whatever this is, whoever did this, he'll find a way. Dorothy wiped her eyes. I appreciate the sentiment, honey, but this is small-town politics. These people have been doing this for generations. They know how to use the system against anyone they don't like. Then they've never dealt with Hell's Angels before. The words were simple, but something in Jessica's voice made Dorothy pause. What do you mean? I mean my father has spent 40 years building a network of people who owe him favors. People in places you wouldn't believe. Lawyers, judges, politicians. Jessica's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You'd be surprised what happens when you call in 30 years of debts all at once. The inspection team arrived at noon. 3 men in county uniforms, clipboards in hand, faces carefully blank. Behind them, Kevin Marsh leaned against his truck, arms crossed, smirk firmly in place. Gunner met them at the property line. Gentlemen, sir, we're here to conduct an inspection of this property pursuant to the notice of violations. I'm aware. Gunner held up a hand. Before you start, I'd like you to meet someone. He stepped aside, and a woman walked forward. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Dorothy's monthly income. She carried a leather briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. Gentlemen, I'm Margaret Chen, attorney at law. I represent the Walsh family in this matter. The lead inspector blinked. Ma'am, this is a routine inspection. There's nothing routine about harassment, mister. She glanced at his badge. Henderson. I have here a copy of the notice you issued, which was filed at 6:47 this morning. I also have documentation showing that an emergency town council meeting was held last night at 9 p.m. with less than 2 hours notice, which violates Ohio Open Meetings Act requirements. She pulled papers from her briefcase, handed them to the inspector. Furthermore, I have affidavits from 12 witnesses stating that the construction work performed on this property was done entirely by volunteers using donated materials. No money exchanged hands, which means this falls under the Good Samaritan renovation exemption, Ohio Revised Code Section 4101.13. Henderson looked at the papers. His face went pale. I wasn't aware. I'm sure you weren't, which is why I'm giving you the opportunity to walk away right now, conduct a proper review of the legal situation, and return at an appropriate time with appropriate documentation. Margaret Chen smiled, and it was the smile of a shark who smelled blood. Or you can proceed with this inspection, and I can file a lawsuit against the county for harassment, civil rights violations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Your choice. Kevin Marsh pushed off his truck. Now wait just a minute, Mr. Marsh. Margaret turned that shark smile on him. I'm so glad you're here. I was planning to have papers served at your home, but this is much more convenient. She pulled another document from her briefcase. This is a cease and desist order relating to your defamatory statements about the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club and the Walsh family. I have witnesses who heard you call these men murderers, drug dealers, and gang members in a public setting. Those statements are demonstrably false and have caused material harm to my client's reputation. Marsh's face went from confident to confused to furious in the space of 3 seconds. You can't. I absolutely can. And if you continue your campaign of harassment against this family, I will pursue every legal remedy available, including civil damages that will make the cost of your divorce look like pocket change. Marsh's mouth opened, closed. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. This isn't over, he spat. Actually, Mr. Marsh, it is. Unless you'd like to spend the next 3 years in court and the next 30 paying off the judgment. Margaret Chen turned back to the inspectors. Gentlemen, your decision? Henderson looked at his colleagues, looked at the papers in his hand, looked at Kevin Marsh, still sputtering with impotent rage. We'll need to review this with our supervisor. Of course, Here's my card. Have your supervisor call me directly. I'm sure we can resolve this matter professionally. The inspectors retreated to their van. Marsh stood frozen for a moment longer, then stormed to his truck and peeled away, tires screaming against asphalt. Gunnar watched him go. Thank you, Margaret. Don't thank me yet. This is just round one. She tucked her briefcase under her arm. They'll be back. Men like Marsh don't give up easy. But we bought you time. How much time? Enough to finish what you started, maybe enough to make it stick. She looked at the house, at the new porch, at the bikers who'd paused their work to watch the confrontation. You've got good people here. Make sure they know what they're fighting for. She walked back to her car, heels clicking on the sidewalk. Dorothy stood on the porch, Emma beside her, both of them staring at Gunnar. Who was that woman? Old friend. We helped her brother out of a jam back in '92. She's been waiting for a chance to repay the favor. Gunnar climbed the porch steps. The inspectors are gone, for now. We can keep working. But they'll come back. Probably, but by then we'll be ready. He looked at Dorothy, at Emma, at this family he'd stumbled into less than 48 hours ago. I promise you, ma'am, whatever happens next, you won't face it alone. Dorothy's eyes glistened. Why are you doing this, really? It can't just be because Emma gave you some coins. Gunnar was quiet for a long moment. When Sarah died, he said finally, I lost everything. Not just my daughter. I lost my faith, my purpose, my reason for getting up in the morning. I spent years trying to drink myself to death, and when that didn't work, I just existed, going through the motions, waiting for it to be over. He looked at Emma. And then I met your granddaughter, this little girl who had nothing and gave it all away anyway, who looked at a broken old man and saw someone worth helping. His voice caught. She reminded me that there's still good in the world, that kindness still matters, that maybe I still have something left to give. He turned back to Dorothy. So yeah, ma'am, I'm doing this because of the coins. But I'm also doing this because your granddaughter saved my life. And saving her back is the least I can do. Dorothy reached out and took his hand. You're a good man, Gunnar. Whatever you've done, whatever you've been, you're a good man. I'm trying to be, ma'am. For the first time in a long time, I'm really trying. The afternoon brought more surprises. Emma was helping carry lumber when she noticed a group of people walking down Miller Street. Not bikers this time, regular people, neighbors. Mr. Patterson led the group, his cane tapping steadily. Behind him came Mrs. Kim from the corner store. The Rodriguez family from 2 doors down. Old Miss Eleanor, who hadn't left her house in months. A dozen more faces Emma recognized from church, from school, from the everyday life of Cedar Falls. They stopped at the edge of the property. Dorothy Walsh, Mr. Patterson called out. We need to talk. Dorothy emerged from the house, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Nathan, what is this? This is us. Mr. Patterson gestured at the group behind him. The ones who should have been here 3 years ago when you needed help. The ones who walked past your falling down porch and said nothing. The ones who heard you struggling and looked the other way. His voice cracked with shame. We heard what happened this morning, the inspection, Kevin Marsh and his cronies trying to run you out. And we decided, some of us at least, that we've been silent long enough. Mrs. Kim stepped forward. I brought food. It's not much, but I brought tools, Mr. Rodriguez said. And my sons. They're strong. They can help. I can't do much physical work anymore, Miss Eleanor said quietly. But I can sit with Emma if you need. I can make phone calls. I can be present. One by one, the neighbors spoke up, offering what they had. Not much, maybe. Not 1,000 motorcycles or $47,000. But something, presence, solidarity, the simple act of showing up. Dorothy's hand went to her heart. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let us help. Mr. Patterson moved forward, reached out, took her hand. We should have been here from the start, Dorothy. Let us be here now. Emma watched from the porch steps, tears streaming down her face. This was it, she realized. This was what her grandmother had always talked about, what her mother had believed in before she died. Community. Not perfect people doing perfect things, just ordinary people, flawed and scared and uncertain, choosing to stand together anyway. Gunnar appeared at Emma's shoulder. Look at that, little sister. I see it. You did this. You know that, right? Emma shook her head. I didn't do anything. I just gave some coins to. You started a chain reaction. One act of kindness spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Gunnar put his hand on her shoulder. Never underestimate the power of a single good deed. Emma watched her grandmother embrace Mr. Patterson, watched the neighbors flow onto the property, mixing with the bikers, starting conversations that would have been unimaginable 2 days ago. Leather-clad outlaws working side by side with church ladies and shopkeepers. Maybe this was what hope looked like. Not a feeling, but an action. Not a wish, but a choice. The trouble found them at sunset. Emma was inside, eating dinner with her grandmother and Jessica, when she heard the engines. Not the familiar rumble of Harleys, something different, higher, angrier. She ran to the window. 3 trucks had pulled up at the end of Miller Street, blocking the road. Men climbed out of the back, not bikers, but young guys in work boots and flannel shirts, carrying baseball bats and tire irons. Kevin Marsh's truck was parked behind them. Grandma, Emma's voice shook. Grandma, look. Dorothy came to the window. Her face went white. Oh, Lord. Gunnar was already outside, walking toward the trucks with Chain and a dozen other bikers flanking him. The neighbors who'd stayed to help moved to the edges of the property, uncertain, scared. Marsh! Gunnar's voice carried across the distance. What do you think you're doing? What I should have done this morning. Marsh stepped forward, emboldened by the men behind him. Getting rid of you. All of you. You bring a bunch of boys with baseball bats to threaten us? Chain laughed, harsh and cold. You know who we are, right? I know you're criminals who've been terrorizing my neighborhood. I know you've got our women and children so scared they can't sleep at night. And I know the police won't do a damn thing about it. The police won't do anything because we haven't broken any laws. Then I guess we'll have to take matters into our own hands. The men behind Marsh surged forward, and Emma did something she couldn't explain. She ran, not away from the confrontation, but toward it. Through the door, down the porch steps, across the lawn, until she was standing directly between the bikers and the approaching mob. Stop! Her voice was small, but it carried. Everyone froze. Emma! Dorothy screamed from the porch. Emma, get back here! But Emma didn't move. She stood her ground, this tiny 11-year-old girl with tear-streaked cheeks and clenched fists, staring down 20 armed men. What are you doing? Marsh's voice was uncertain now. Get out of the way, kid. No. I said get out of the way. And I said no. Emma's voice grew stronger. You want to hurt these people? You're going to have to go through me first. Marsh laughed, but it was a nervous sound. Don't be stupid, girl. This isn't about you. Yes, it is. Everything that's happening is because of me. I gave Gunnar my money. I started all of this. She took a step forward. So if you want to blame someone, blame me. If you want to punish someone, punish me, but leave everyone else alone. The men behind Marsh exchanged glances. Some of them were lowering their weapons, looking uncomfortable. She's just a kid, one of them muttered. Shut up. Marsh's face was red with fury. This doesn't change anything. These bikers fixed my grandmother's house when nobody else would. Emma's voice rang out clear and strong. They gave us money for my education. They protected us when you tried to have us thrown out of our home. They showed up when this whole town turned its back on us. She pointed at Marsh. What have you done? Besides complain? Besides try to destroy something good because you're too scared and too small to understand it. Marsh's jaw worked, his hands clenched at his sides. You don't know what you're talking about, girl. You don't know what these people are capable of. I know exactly what they're capable of. Emma's voice dropped low. Kindness, loyalty, showing up when it matters. She looked at the men behind Marsh. Young guys, most of them. Guys who probably had little sisters or daughters of their own. I know you're scared. I know these men look different than you, dress different, live different. But being different isn't the same as being bad. And being afraid isn't the same as being right. She spread her arms wide. So go ahead, do what you came to do. Hit an 11-year-old girl who was just trying to help someone in need. That's the story you want to tell? That's the person you want to be? The silence stretched like a wire pulled tight. Then one of the men dropped his bat. I'm out. He shook his head, backing away. I didn't sign up to fight kids. Another bat hit the ground, then a tire iron. One by one, Marsh's army dissolved. Where are you going? Marsh spun around, face purple with rage. Get back here. We're not done. Yeah, Marsh, we are. The last man to leave stopped at his truck. You said these people were dangerous, terrorists, but all I see is a little girl with more guts than you'll ever have. He climbed into his truck and drove away. Marsh stood alone in the middle of Miller Street, surrounded by dropped weapons and disappearing allies. Gunner walked forward, stopping a few feet away from Emma. Mr. Marsh, he said quietly, I think it's time for you to go home. Marsh looked at Gunner, at Emma, at the bikers and neighbors standing unified behind them. Something crumbled in his face. Not anger anymore, something worse. Defeat. He turned without another word and walked to his truck. The engine started. The tires rolled, and Kevin Marsh disappeared down Miller Street, smaller than he'd ever been. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her legs gave out. Gunner caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you, little sister. His voice was rough with emotion. I've got you. Dorothy reached them a second later, pulling Emma into her arms, crying and laughing and holding on like she'd never let go. You brave, stupid, wonderful girl, Dorothy sobbed. Don't you ever scare me like that again. I'm sorry, Grandma. I couldn't let them. I know, baby. I know. Around them, the neighbors and bikers stood in stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. It spread slowly at first, then faster, until the whole street echoed with applause. For a little girl who'd stood in front of an army with nothing but her words in her heart. For $47 that had changed everything. For the power of one small act of kindness, rippling outward until it moved the world. The applause faded, but the silence that followed felt different from before. Lighter somehow, like the air itself had changed. Emma sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening, her grandmother on one side and Gunner on the other. The neighbors had started drifting home, but many lingered, reluctant to leave, as if they were afraid the magic might disappear the moment they turned their backs. You could have been killed. Dorothy's voice was steady, but her hands still trembled. You know that, right? Walking in front of those men like that. I know, Grandma. Then why did you do it? Emma pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Because it was the right thing to do. Dorothy let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Lord have mercy. You sound just like your mother. Is that bad? No, baby. Dorothy pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her forehead. That's the best thing you could possibly be. Gunner had been quiet, staring out at the street where his brothers were cleaning up, loading tools, preparing for whatever came next. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I've seen a lot of courage in my life. Battlefields, bar fights, situations where men had to make choices that could end them. He turned to look at Emma. What you did tonight was braver than any of it. I was scared. That's what makes it brave. Anyone can stand up when they're not afraid. Real courage is when your knees are shaking and your heart's pounding, and you do it anyway. Jessica appeared on the porch, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. She handed one to her father and sat down on the railing. "The news vans are back," she said quietly. "3 of them this time. They're parked at the end of the street." Dorothy sighed. "Of course they are." "We should talk to them." Gunner's voice was thoughtful. "Tell our side of the story before Marsh and his people spin it into something ugly." "I don't want Emma on television. She's been through enough." "She doesn't have to be." Gunner looked at Dorothy. "But you could. You could tell them what happened here. The real story. Not gang members terrorizing a neighborhood, but people coming together to help a family in need." Dorothy shook her head. "I'm just an old woman with a falling down house. Nobody wants to hear from me." "That's exactly why they need to hear from you." Jessica leaned forward. "Look, I work in marketing. I know how these things play out. If we don't control the narrative, someone else will. And that someone will probably be Kevin Marsh." "She's right, ma'am." Shane had climbed the porch steps, his massive frame somehow fitting into the small space. "Public opinion matters. If people see bikers as the villains, it doesn't matter what we actually did. But if they see the truth, neighbors helping neighbors, strangers becoming family, that changes everything." Dorothy looked at Emma. "What do you think, baby?" Emma considered the question seriously. "I think you should tell them, Grandma. Not for us, for the next family that needs help. Maybe if people see what happened here, they'll do the same thing somewhere else." Dorothy's eyes glistened. "When did you get so wise?" "I told you. I learned from you." Dorothy took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, set her jaw in that way she had when she'd made up her mind about something. "Fine, I'll talk to them, but nobody mentions Emma by name, understood? She's been through enough without becoming a news story." "Understood," Gunner said, "and I want final approval on anything that airs. If they try to twist this into something sensational..." "Margaret Chen is still here. She'll handle the legal side." Dorothy nodded slowly. "Okay then, let's go tell the world what really happened on Miller Street." The interview happened on the new porch, Dorothy sitting straight and proud in her rocking chair while reporters gathered on the lawn. The questions came rapid fire, but Dorothy handled them with the calm of a woman who'd spent 68 years dealing with life's curveballs. Yes, the bikers had arrived unexpectedly. Yes, they'd done extensive repairs. No, she hadn't asked for any of it. It had started with her granddaughter's simple act of kindness, and it had grown into something none of them could have predicted. "Mrs. Walsh, some residents have expressed concern about having Hell's Angels in their neighborhood. How do you respond to those concerns?" Dorothy's eyes found Emma, watching from inside the house. "I respond by asking those residents where they were when my porch was falling apart, where they were when I couldn't afford to fix my roof, where they were when my granddaughter was wearing shoes with holes, because I had to choose between rent and clothes." Her voice grew stronger. "These men, these Hell's Angels that everyone's so afraid of, they showed up. They fixed what was broken. They protected my family when others tried to tear us down. So you can call them whatever names you want. I call them family." The reporters scribbled furiously. "Is it true that your granddaughter gave one of the bikers her entire savings?" "It's true." "Why would she do that?" Dorothy smiled, and there was something fierce in it. "Because she saw someone who needed help, and she helped. That's how I raised her. That's how my mama raised me. When you can help, you help. It's not complicated." "What's next for your family, Mrs. Walsh?" Dorothy paused, looked at the new porch, the fresh paint, the repaired roof, looked at the bikers still gathered on her lawn, at the neighbors who'd finally stepped up, at the life that had changed so completely in just 2 days. "Next, we live," she said simply. "We help others when we can. We remember what happened here, and we try to be worthy of it." The interview ended. The cameras packed up. The reporters drifted away to file their stories, and Miller Street settled into a different kind of quiet. The goodbyes started at dawn. Emma woke to the sound of engines warming up. A familiar rumble now that somehow felt both comforting and heartbreaking. She pulled on clothes and ran outside, still half asleep, desperate to catch them before they left. The bikers were loading up, strapping bags to their bikes, shaking hands with the neighbors who'd come to see them off. The street had transformed overnight, not just the Walsh house, but the whole block. Fences that had been sagging for years now stood straight. Lawns that had grown wild were trimmed and neat. Porches that had been falling apart had been quietly repaired while everyone slept. "You didn't just fix our house," Dorothy murmured, surveying the transformation. "You fixed the whole neighborhood." "Figured while we were here we might as well be thorough." Gunnar shrugged like it was nothing, but Emma could see the pride in his eyes. Some of the brothers got restless, needed something to do with their hands. Chain approached, helmet tucked under his arm. "We've got to hit the road, brother. Some of us have jobs to get back to, parole officers to check in with." The joke landed flat, but a few of the bikers chuckled anyway. "Before you go," Dorothy stepped forward, holding something in her hands, a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I made these last night. Couldn't sleep anyway. Just some sandwiches for the road. Nothing fancy." Chain took the package with hands that had broken bones and held dying friends and done things that would keep most people up at night. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for everything." The bikers lined up to say goodbye. One by one, they approached Emma, these massive men in leather and denim, and each one left something behind. A coin pressed into her palm with a rough blessing. "Road money. You never run out if a brother gave it to you." A keychain with a tiny motorcycle hanging from it. "Belonged to my daughter. She'd want you to have it." A handwritten note folded small. "My number. You ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call." By the time the last biker had passed, Emma's pockets were bulging with trinkets, and her heart was so full it hurt to breathe. Gunnar was the last to approach. He stood in front of Emma for a long moment, this gray-bearded giant who'd stumbled into her life at a dying gas station and changed everything. "I don't know how to say goodbye to you, little sister." "Then don't." Emma's voice cracked. "Don't say goodbye, say something else." Gunnar's jaw worked. He blinked hard, looked away, looked back. "How about, see you later?" "Promise?" "Promise." He dropped to one knee, putting himself at her level. "I meant what I said, Emma. You saved my life, and I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be worthy of that." "You already are." Gunnar shook his head. "Not yet, but I'm working on it." He reached into his vest and pulled out something Emma hadn't seen before. A folded piece of paper, creased and worn like it had been handled many times. "I wrote this last night. Couldn't sleep either." He pressed it into her hands. "Don't read it now. Wait until we're gone. Wait until you need to remember that you matter." Emma clutched the paper to her chest. "I'm going to miss you." "I'm going to miss you too, little sister." Gunnar stood, joints creaking, and pulled her into a hug that smelled like leather and engine oil and something that felt like safety. "But this isn't the end. Some roads always circle back. Remember that." "I'll remember." He let her go, turned to Dorothy. "Ma'am." "Gunnar." They looked at each other, these two people who'd been strangers 3 days ago, and were now bound by something neither of them could fully explain. "Thank you," Dorothy said, "for seeing my granddaughter, for seeing both of us. Thank you for letting us stay." Dorothy reached up and put her hand on his weathered cheek. "You take care of yourself, you hear? And you come back, whenever you need to. This is your home now, too." Gunnar's eyes glistened. He nodded once, not trusting his voice. Jessica appeared at her father's side. "I'll make sure he behaves." "You better." Dorothy pulled Jessica into a hug. "You take care of him, and you take care of yourself. Life's too short to waste time on old grudges." "I know that now." Jessica's voice was thick. "Thank you for helping me see it." The engines roared to life. One by one, the bikes pulled away from the curb, a procession of chrome and leather and thunder, rolling down Miller Street like a parade. Neighbors came out onto their porches to watch, some waving, some just standing in silent tribute. Gunnar was the last to go. He swung his leg over his bike, settled into the seat, and looked back one final time at the house with the new porch, and the fresh paint, and the little girl standing on the steps with tears running down her face. He raised his fist in salute. Emma raised hers back. Then he twisted the throttle, and the road swallowed him up, and the rumble faded to an echo, and the echo faded to silence, and Miller Street was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now, the quiet of change, the quiet of hope. Emma didn't read the note until that night. She waited until Dorothy was asleep, until the house had settled into its new creaks and groans, until the only light came from the street lamp outside her window, casting silver rectangles across her bed. She unfolded the paper with trembling hands. Gunnar's handwriting was rough, the letters scratched into the page like he'd had to fight for each one. Little sister, by the time you read this, I'll be on the road somewhere, probably thinking about you, probably wondering if I said the right things, or if I should have said more. Here's what I want you to know. The world is going to try to take your kindness from you. It's going to tell you that helping strangers is stupid, that being soft is weakness, that the only way to survive is to harden your heart and look out for yourself. Don't listen. Your kindness saved my life, not just at the gas station, but every moment after. You reminded me that there's still good in the world, that people still choose compassion over convenience, that hope isn't just a word, it's a decision we make every single day. Keep making that decision. Keep being the girl who sees someone hurting and reaches out. Keep being the girl who gives away her dreams because someone else needs them more. The world needs more people like you. Don't let it convince you to be anything else. I don't know if I'll ever see you again. Roads are long and life is uncertain. But I want you to know that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'll be carrying a piece of you with me. You are the best person I've ever met. Someday you'll understand what that means. Until then, keep helping people. Keep counting your coins. Keep dreaming your dreams. And remember, some roads always circle back. Gunnar. P.S. The $47.83 is still in my pocket. I'm never spending it. It's not money anymore. It's a reminder. Emma read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, slipped it under her pillow, and fell asleep with her hand pressed against it, feeling the words through cotton and paper like they were a heartbeat she could hold. 6 months later, Emma's jar was full again. $52.17 this time, saved from odd jobs and chores, and the occasional birthday card from relatives she barely knew. The mason jar sat on her nightstand, label rewritten in fresh blue marker. But the word was different now. Not dreams, others. It had been Dorothy's idea, sort of. They'd been talking about the future, about college and nursing school, and all the things that $47,000 could now make possible. And Emma had said something that made her grandmother cry. I want to start a pantry, like the ones at church, but for our neighborhood, for anyone who needs it. And Dorothy had nodded, wiped her eyes and said, then that's exactly what we'll do. The pantry started small, a shelf in the garage, stocked with canned goods and pasta and peanut butter. Emma made flyers and handed them out at school, at church, at the grocery store where the manager remembered her grandmother from the diner and agreed to donate the day-old bread. Word spread. Within weeks, the shelf had become 2 shelves, then 3. Neighbors started dropping off bags of groceries. The local food bank heard about it and offered to partner up. A reporter from the same news station that had covered the bikers' visit came back for a follow-up story. This is Emma's pantry, the reporter said into the camera, standing in front of the garage that had become a hub of activity. Named after the 11-year-old girl who gave away her entire savings to help a stranger, and who hasn't stopped helping since. Emma watched the segment air from her grandmother's living room, surrounded by neighbors who'd become friends and strangers who'd become family. You did good, baby, Dorothy said, squeezing her hand. We did good, Emma corrected. All of us. Mr. Patterson raised his coffee cup. To Emma. To Emma, the room echoed. But Emma was looking out the window, watching the street where 1,000 motorcycles had once rumbled, where everything had changed because she'd seen a tired man at a gas station and decided to help. She wondered where Gunnar was, if he was safe, if he thought about her. The answer came 3 days later. Emma was restocking shelves when she heard the engine. Not the usual neighborhood sounds, lawnmowers and leaf blowers and kids on bicycles. This was something different, deeper, familiar. She walked to the garage door and looked out. A single motorcycle sat at the curb, chrome glinting in the afternoon sun. Gunnar climbed off slowly, moving like a man who'd been riding for days. His beard was longer, his face more weathered, but his eyes, those tired, kind eyes, were exactly the same. Hey, little sister. Emma was running before she knew she'd moved. She hit him at full speed, wrapping her arms around his waist, burying her face in his leather vest. He caught her easily, holding her tight, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. You came back. I told you some roads always circle back. Emma pulled away just enough to look at his face. Are you okay? I am now. Dorothy appeared in the garage doorway, dish towel in her hands, mouth hanging open. Lord have mercy, look what the road dragged in. Gunnar grinned. Actually grinned, wide and real. Ma'am, don't you ma'am me. Get up here and give me a proper hug. He climbed the driveway, letting Dorothy fold him into an embrace that made him look small somehow, despite being twice her size. We were worried about you, she murmured. Emma's been checking the news every day. Nothing to worry about, just had some things to figure out. And did you figure them out? Gunnar looked back at Emma, at this girl who'd grown an inch since he'd last seen her, who was running a neighborhood pantry now, who'd taken $47 and turned it into something that fed dozens of families every week. Yeah, he said quietly, I think I finally did. The evening passed in conversation, in coffee, in stories shared on the new porch. Gunnar told them about the road, about reconnecting with Jessica, who'd convinced him to see a therapist for the first time in 30 years, about visiting Sarah's grave and finally being able to say goodbye, about the other stops he'd made, other families he'd helped, paying forward what Emma had started. There's a woman in Kentucky with a new roof because of you, he said. A kid in Tennessee who got his first bike because someone gave him a chance. A shelter in West Virginia that got enough donations to stay open another year. Emma listened, eyes wide. You did all that? We did all that. It started with you, Emma. Everything starts somewhere. Dorothy brought out plates of food, insisting he eat before he said another word. The neighbors drifted over, drawn by the sound of Gunnar's bike, and soon the yard was full of people who remembered the man who'd knelt on their street 6 months ago and asked how he could help. As the sun set, Gunnar pulled something from his saddlebag. A new patch, different from the guardian angel one he'd given Emma before. This one showed 2 hands, one large, one small, reaching toward each other. The club made this, he said, for you, for what you started. Emma took it carefully. What does it mean? It means wherever there's a Hell's Angel, you've got a brother looking out for you. It means you're one of us. He paused. It means you're never alone. Emma looked at the patch, at Gunnar, at her grandmother and the neighbors, and the pantry full of food waiting to help whoever needed it next. I was never alone, she said. I just didn't know it yet. Gunnar smiled, and there was something different in it now. Not tired, not sad, at peace. No, he agreed. You never were. Gunnar stayed for 3 days. He helped Emma reorganize the pantry. He fixed a leaky faucet in Mrs. Kim's store. He sat on the porch with Dorothy in the evenings, talking about things Emma couldn't hear, but that made her grandmother laugh and cry in equal measure. On the morning of the 4th day, Emma woke to find him loading his bike. You're leaving. Got to keep moving, little sister. That's who I am. Will you come back? Always. She walked to him, still in her pajamas, morning dew cold on her bare feet. I keep your letter under my pillow. I read it every night. Gunner's jaw tightened. Does it help? It reminds me who I want to be. You already are that person, Emma. You always were. He knelt down, putting himself at her level one more time. I want you to remember something. When you're older, when life gets hard and people let you down, and you start to wonder if kindness is worth it. What? Remember that a scared old man showed up at a gas station one Tuesday morning with nothing but empty pockets and emptier faith. And a little girl with $47 changed his entire life. His voice cracked. That's the power you have, Emma. The power to change things. The power to save people. Don't ever forget it. I won't. Promise me. I promise. He hugged her one last time. Then he stood, nodded to Dorothy watching from the porch, and swung his leg over his bike. The engine roared to life. Emma raised her hand. Gunner raised his. And then he was gone, disappearing down Miller Street, chrome catching morning light, leaving behind a girl who would never forget him and a community that would never be the same. 10 years later, a young woman in nursing scrubs stood in the emergency room of Cedar Falls General Hospital. Her name badge read Emma Walsh, RN. The shift had been brutal. 12 hours of accidents and emergencies and people at their worst moments. But Emma moved through it with the calm competence she'd spent years developing. A patient was wheeled in, unconscious, leather vest cut away by paramedics. Tattoos covered his arms. A Hell's Angels patch had been found in his wallet. Emma approached the bed. What do we have? Motorcycle accident, multiple fractures, possible internal bleeding. She checked his vitals, assessed his injuries, called for tests and scans and specialists. As she worked, her hand brushed something tucked into the man's jeans pocket. A folded piece of paper, worn soft with age. She shouldn't have looked. It wasn't professional. But something made her pull it out, unfold it, read the words scrawled inside. If anything happens to me, contact Emma Walsh. Miller Street, Cedar Falls. Tell her Gunner said thank you. The paper shook in her hands. She looked at the patient's face, at the gray beard and weathered skin, and closed eyes of a man she'd thought about every day for a decade. Gunner? No response. His vitals were stable, but critical. Emma took a breath, squared her shoulders, made a decision. Paige, the best surgeon we have, she said to the nurse beside her, and someone get me a phone. I have calls to make. Within hours, the waiting room filled with leather and chrome. Hell's Angels from 3 states, responding to the network that Gunner had built, the family that never forgot its own. Jessica arrived by morning, holding her father's hand, praying the same prayers Dorothy had taught her months ago, when 1,000 motorcycles had changed everything. And Emma stood in the middle of it all, still in her scrubs, still bearing the patch she'd worn every day for 10 years, finally understanding what Gunner had meant about roads that circle back. Some roads do circle back. Some debts never get fully paid. And some little girls grow up to save the people who saved them. 3 weeks later, Gunner opened his eyes. Emma was there, waiting, same way she'd waited on that porch a decade ago for 1,000 motorcycles to arrive. Hey, old man. Gunner's voice was a rasp. Hey, little sister. You scared me. Sorry about that. Emma leaned forward, took his weathered hand in hers. You still have my $47, don't you? A weak laugh escaped his cracked lips. Never spent a penny. Good, Emma squeezed his hand, because you still owe me. Gunner looked at her, this woman who'd been a girl with a jar of dreams, who'd given away everything she had to a stranger, who'd grown up to become exactly the person she was always meant to be. I owe you everything, he whispered. No, Emma shook her head. You showed me what kindness can do. You showed this whole town. That's worth more than any amount of money. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper. The letter. The one he'd written her 10 years ago. The one she'd read every night. You told me to keep helping people. To keep being the girl who sees someone hurting and reaches out. Did you? Every single day. Gunner's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. I'm proud of you, Emma. I learned from the best. She folded the letter and tucked it back in her pocket. Now get some rest. You've got a lot of road left to ride. Gunner smiled, tired and worn but real. Some roads circle back, he murmured as his eyes drifted closed. Yeah, Emma said softly. They do. She sat with him until he slept. This man who'd changed her life. This stranger who'd become family. This broken soul who'd been healed by $47 and a little girl's heart. Outside, the sun rose over Cedar Falls. In a garage on Miller Street, volunteers were already stocking shelves. Somewhere on a distant highway, 1,000 engines waited to ride. And Emma Walsh, the girl who gave away her dreams and got back something bigger, sat in a hospital room and knew, really knew, that kindness was never wasted. It planted seeds. Sometimes they grew into flowers. Sometimes they grew into forests. And sometimes, just sometimes, they grew into something that could change the whole world. One coin at a time, one heart at a time, one choice at a time. That's all it takes. That's everything it takes.